Councillors, members of the public, staff and those online, welcome to the Infrastructure and Planning Committee meeting. Please remember that your phones need to be turned off or on silent, and I'll ask Councillor O'Brien to give us a karakia. Thank you, Councillor. Correct. Can you hear us down the back? Thank you. So, meeting notices. Council and Standing, and I'll read this. Council and Standing Committee meetings are live streamed on the Council website and YouTube channel. Public gallery attendees' presence implies your consent to being broadcast. Further information about live streaming protocols can be found on the Council's website. Health and safety. In case of emergency, follow the building wardens to the nearest exit, and the meeting point is across the road at Peace Park, which is out here by the museum. Bathroom facilities are located opposite the Chambers foyer entrance where you're coming off Margaret Mahi Park. So finally, councillors and presenters, just remember to turn your mics on when you're addressing the meeting. Thanks. Apologies. So we have apology from Councillor Isles and Councillor Boynton. So someone like to move those be accepted. Councillor Tunchos and Councillor Jukes, all those in favour please say aye. Aye. Now, Councillor Rangiaho has a tribute, really. Thank you.
Tēnā tātou. Can you hear me? Ko te mea tuatahi ka tukuna tu tēnei mihi ki a koe I te kai hautu mo te timata noa tātou karakia. Ko tuarua, ka tukuna tu nā roimata aroha ki nā whānau, ki nā taonga te mate I roto a tātou rohe, ki nā whānau pani, nā kapua pauri I runga I a rātou. Me te hoa tauni, koenei nā aroha pūmautanga mai tō hoa, kai mahi o te kaunihira tukuna tu ki a koe me tō whānau I runga I tēnei wā ki te mate hana o tō māma. Acknowledging all those, acknowledging Councillor for our opening karakia, but also to the many who have passed within our district. Special condolences to our fellow councillor Tony Boynton to the loss of her mum, and that we are here with you, Tony. So, tēnā tātou katoa.
So, any further acknowledgements, Councillor Jukes?
Thank you. It was a couple of weeks ago, but I'd also like to acknowledge the passing of Puihari Morris. She has been very active in the Disabilities Centre, so you know, for the disabled. So I'd just like to acknowledge her passing as well.
Ka pai, Jules.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Amick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. Yes, last week I attended the Tourism Summit in Auckland with a couple of the staff from the Tourism Events team. Kohitapi Lodge and Te Ohiwa Oysters were finalists in the Tourism Awards this year, with Kohitapi Lodge winning the Māori section, and Te Ohiwa Oysters for the first year entry was a finalist. So well done to them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Next item, conflict of interest. Do we have any conflict of interest today? There be none. Thank you. We don't have a public forum. So we move on to item 5, which is confirmation of minutes. And are there any corrections to those minutes, which are on page 9 of the agenda? If not, do I have a mover and a seconder for those? Councillor James, Councillor Rangiaho. Do we have any debate? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. So we move on to item 6, which is reports. The first one is Infrastructure and Planning Report, November 24, delivered by Bevan Gray. and they're on pages 9 to 22 of the agenda. Thank you, sir.
Morena koutou. Before I start, I'd just like to say this will be my last committee meeting sitting up the front here for infrastructure and planning before I move into the new position and leading the other committee. So go easy on me on the last one. So this report follows the standard template. So there'll be an update on our capital delivery program. We've also provided an update on the workshop that we had on the 23rd of October around the transport program as a result of the funding cuts through the NLTP. So the items in there, we don't need to seek any resolutions for because we are managing within the approved budgets that we have. But I think for the purposes of the public, I'll just work through those. So for the special purpose roads, we had a reduced allocation. So we're comfortable to manage the impacts through that reduced allocation. For footpaths, we are planning on managing within the approved allocation, but including some year one surplus that we've already funded from a local share to get on with the program. Keeper Road, that was a significant project. We've proposed to pause that one until we get some further information around boat harbour timing, and then also potentially there's a $100 million low cost, low risk program that we're waiting for some clarity from central government on as well. Resilience funded projects, we've got Rewatu and Taniatua. We're going to sort of reschedule those and progress them. And then the other roading improvements, proposing to defer walking and cycling and safety projects until the 2027 period, where we're hoping central government will provide some more funding allocation towards that work category. We're going to retain our local share for the remaining resilience projects, and we will look at that $100 million low cost, low risk funding allocation. We're expecting to get some clarity on that in 2025 from Kotahi, and we can see what projects we can put forward for that allocation. Galston Road, safer crossings, we're looking to de-scope and continue to deliver that one, and we'll be returning to a future IPC committee with some options around that proposal, whether it's going to be temporary bolt-on type speed humps or AC speed humps. We're going to de-scope and deliver the speed management item, so there is a workshop next week to discuss that, and then the seal extension program again next week. We will work through that, and then the outputs from that workshop will come to a subsequent IPC. February, we will also be looking for a decision on the Arawa and Bridge Street roundabout. So we're looking at sort of what are the de-scoping options available to us to work within the budget we've got. And so we'll bring that through to you next year. And we're planning to fully fund the annual improvements associated with renewals, but also looking at opportunities around the $100 million fund next year. In terms of planning activities, we're looking to defer the Network Resilience Program business cases and defer Mill Road, Shore Road intersection improvements until the next NLTP period, so 27 as well. Pōkairoa Ngāmotu Seal Extension business case, we have had a couple of conversations around whether this one is too significant for the council alone. It also has some growth and economic development drivers as well, so it could be a good fit for the PGF. And then the spatial plan related items, modelling an additional river crossing business case, we're going to try and work within our local share budget to progress those. We've got some airport updates, port updates, and a number of solid waste updates in the report, but I think it was important to work through those following the resolution, and I guess understanding the significant cuts that were made to the program. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, sir. Is there any points of clarification? Mayor Victor?
The two red flag items just stick out. $2.8 million is a lot of money in the case of water treatment upgrades. Could you just detail what is involved, what we get for the $2.8 million, and then the Ruatoki water treatments? Is that log-jammed, and is it likely to be unjammed, or what do you foresee happening there?
So they are both complete treatment plants, so brand new water treatment plants. Matata will be a bigger water treatment plant, and the budget includes obviously the chlorination, but also potentially a bigger, better building and with better access. We are working through that conversation with the community around residual treatment, chlorination, and that's one of the reasons why that one's red. And same with Ruatoki, another treatment plant. That one's at risk because the river has moved and it is very close to our intake, and whenever we get heavy rain, you get a lot of cloudy, disturbed water going through. So it's a non-compliant, both of these are non-compliant drinking water supplies, and we need to do some work on those. I don't see it being a log jam. It's about finding access to good water on land that we can sort of work with the landowner for sort of access in perpetuity. So we need to find two sites, one for the bore, the other one for placing the treatment plant on it.
Just, can I have a supplementary, please? If our backs were against the wall financially, Murupara at the moment we're dosing. We have a dosing system in place, and it seems to have been relatively well accepted. Could that be something that we could sweat for a little bit longer? I mean, you can do the plant design and all of that and just press pause, or is that not?
I wouldn't like to press pause. It's not the ideal way to be treating water. It is okay from a Taumata Arawai regulator perspective that we are providing residual treatment, but an improved treatment plant and treatment solution will allow us to reduce the level of chlorination, and I think that is the key concern.
But the current setup, albeit temporary, is actually working at the moment. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So I've got Deputy Mayor Emick and then Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Good morning. Thank you, Bevan. I'm just on page 18 about the boat and harbour. A couple of questions of clarity. One was about the boat wash and how is that progressing. I don't know anyone that has used it yet, and I was wondering if we've done enough promotion on that to encourage usage.
I'll just ask Mark to come up and speak to that one. We did a bit of a soft launch on terms of how that operates, rather than going and doing a whole lot of marketing. But I'll let Mark talk to how it's worked.
There.
Morning.
Yes,
Just make sure your mic's on. There's switch. You need
I'll
to
press the
press the
button.
switch. Thank you.
hello. Just in answer to your question, with the checkered history of the boat wash, when we got it up and running, and with the new payment system, there was a decision made to keep as Bevan said, the launch quite soft, because potential kickback from potential users with its checkered past. So whether that's had the desired effect of letting everybody know that it's available to be used is unsure at this stage. and maybe we could do a little bit more work in that space if we don't see any sort of improvement there. But yeah, that was the reasoning behind just a little bit of social media work and some updated signage.
Because there's space for signage down there to say what to do and how to get there. So, but a few people from the fishing club mentioned it the other day, but if we're going to carry on, that would be good. The other question is about the Wairaka Park swimming area, which is, had that really lovely upgrade. My observation is either we're not clearing as regularly as we have in the past, but where the disability ramp is, the logs are all washing around and washing back up the pathway. And on the weekend, children and anyone just could not even get down there. That was the amount of wash that was there.
Yep, so there are two issues there. One is the backwash from slash coming back onto the path, and we've just been working with our contractors to make that a daily cleaning experience. The other thing is the stone that was put into the garden was unsuccessful. Kids had ended up putting it into the river, which was sort of to be expected. So that's going to be upgraded to some riprap. So there's a little bit of remedial work just to finish that off, but the maintenance program will be increased so that that disability path remains clear all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Just before Councillor Dennis, Mark, I have just a quick question. If we raised that rock groin that goes along there, would that stop some of that slash coming in?
That would be my opinion. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regard to the RAG chart, it talks about Blue Rock Quarry design. Could you just briefly tell me what that is? It's a private quarry.
Morning, everyone. So it's just a name that's been given to the area of Taniatua Road. The focus of the resilience work is, so it's not actually in the Blue Rock Quarry. It's just in that area from sort of the start of Taniatua Road to around just past Blue Rock Quarry. There's a lot of like mud and sludge and things that come off the hills in every rain event. So the resilience work in that area of Taniatua Road is going to be focused around sort of detention and keeping the stormwater back off the road and then letting it more slowly come down so that it doesn't get overwhelmed, because at the moment all the culverts get blocked and the road becomes impassable more because of mud and debris than floodwaters. And then the other one that's deemed Red Devon Curves is again just sort of a local name of that area, and that resilience program will be more around raising the level of the road, because that part of the road during flood events is affected by the river level coming up and the road becoming impassable because of floodwaters. So they're
Excellent.
just names to signify the area where the work will happen.
Thank you.
So, Niluka?
The Pokaroa Namotu seal extension, are we actually monitoring traffic down there? So do we know what the numbers are? Well, I think maybe is that the road we actually went down that time with you?
We went down Pokaroa.
Yeah, because we had a little bit of a debate.
Yeah, we have regular traffic monitoring programs. I'd need to look up when the most recent counts on Pokaroa and Namutu were carried out, but we do also have access to some other traffic count data that isn't as complete as our tubes that we put across the road, but it still gives an indication of increases over time. So we've certainly got a lot of historic data showing the increases, and certainly we have noticed some increases since the speed limits were altered on State Highway 30, because it's now, especially for traffic travelling towards Taupō, it's often now the quicker route as well as being the shorter route. It's just obviously not always desirable for people that don't want to drive on an unsealed road.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I use the road often, and I've certainly seen a lot more traffic since they've made the Rotorua Road 60 and 80 case. The road is used pretty often. Yeah.
So, any further points of clarification? There being none, we have a recommendation on page 9. I'll read it out. That the Infrastructure and Planning Update Report, November 24, report be received. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Deputy Mayor Emick, Councillor Tanchos. Any debate? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So 6.2, Three Waters Consent Replacement Program Update. That's with Bevan and Janine. And
Jess.
Jess.
Hi, morena koutou. I'll probably just take the report as read. Obviously, I think this is the second update that we've had at the Infrastructure and Planning Committee, and since then we've had the first program steering group meeting, so a lot of the report is just a report back on the summary of discussion at that first steering group, as well as an update on where we are. Probably the main thing that we've been focusing on is getting good resourcing in place, so we've had some good success in that area with, we've had a new program coordinator start with us. We're sharing that resource with Nicholas Woodley's environmental planning and policy team, and we've also had a communications and engagement advisor start with us who will also be looking after local water done well, so getting some synergies across those two programs. And we've got a project manager in place just in short term at the moment to help us with some key tasks for wastewater scheme and discussions with Fonterra. So probably feeling a little bit calmer about it after the last few weeks of trying to get some structure in place, but we're still trying to get the resourcing in place and looking to really hit the ground running next year. But we'll be looking to have a program steering group possibly in the first week of December before we get to the end of the year to look at the project plan and the procurement plan. So happy to take questions on that
Thank you.
report.
I should have mentioned that the paper's on pages 23 to 31. So do we have any questions of clarification? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr Chair. Good morning, ladies. Page 30 I'm on, when we're looking at the rating and financial impact, just the second sentence about this does not include the costs of subsequent infrastructure upgrades that will be required due to the new consents. It was my understanding that all of that funding had been allocated within the LTP.
I can answer that one. So we started preparing the LTP based on the needs-based AMP that we developed through the early Three Waters reform. We were quite quickly given a funding envelope to work within, which meant we had to push $260 million out of the LTP. $200 million of that was budget earmarked for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. So we retained budget to progress developing and the consent process and the programs, but no budget for the actual build. And it was quite similar to the number of other capital projects we put up where they required business cases first before we could get quantify the dollar or the design. So we followed the same principle and tried to build a Three Waters program that was based on what we were certain of, and from the wastewater consent renewals and the infrastructure required, there was too much ambiguity and uncertainty around it. So we've pushed those out, acknowledging the fact that we still need to do something, and that there needs to be conversations with central government and the various reform processes around how do we fund things in the future.
Okay, and so that will come through on the annual plan requests list, will it?
When the time comes for a design to be submitted or to go through the consent process and a dollar figure developed, that'll come across this table, then as a council as a whole and this committee will have a conversation around budget and where that funding is going to come from.
Thank you.
So I have Councillor Tanjos and then Mayor Luca.
Thank you. Kia ora, morning. My question is, one of the risks identified is recruiting the right level of expertise. And I just wanted to probe into that a little bit. because as has been said, all over the country, councils are looking for people to fill these roles. You've said we're kind of using all recruitment methods. Has this got the potential, to significantly increase the budget? And the other question is are there opportunities to upskill our own staff to take up some of those roles?
So, yes, in a sense, it is going to be a bit of a risk for us, especially over the next 2 to 3 years, which it will be for every local government agency with Three Waters at the moment. What we're actually looking at doing, and we had an early discussion with the program steering group, and we'll have another discussion, is the procurement plan and the approach we take to procuring technical expertise. So we learned quite a bit out of the Matata Wastewater project, and we'll be looking at how we can deliver efficiency. So you have already an example in place where you have your transport panel, your procurement panel. So we're looking at opportunities like that where we could actually take a different approach to procurement, have quite a structured way, and then we have a more efficient way of bringing lots of different briefs of work. We probably are going to see right across New Zealand a real struggle to get that type of expertise, and with that comes cost. But what we will make sure we do is be very, very clear in our briefs and what we're looking for, and making sure that we are competitive. And that we use as much of, and working really closely with the procurement team to make sure we have that, because there will be a lot of work coming out in the next 1 to 2 years. The good thing is that there are synergies across the different projects. So 4 wastewater projects and multiple water projects, we can actually do environmental monitoring as a package. We can do technical work as a package. So we'll be looking at how we can do that. And by making that a slightly bigger brief of work, we're hoping that will give us more competitive costings. Yeah.
May I look at?
Page 26, $7.1 million, which we've got in the budget, and you mentioned the uncertainty over the compliance landscape. And I guess into that $7.1 million, we've got built in some generous contingencies, right? Assuming worst case scenario. Like when we talked about water treatment, sludge and stuff, whether or not it needs to be done, or not. This would include having to have that in it, right? You're going on a worst case scenario, but if the compliance landscape wasn't, then we could make savings off that. Is that not right?
The 7.1 is more about the planning and engagement process to come up with a design and preparing a consent application. The subsequent CapEx as a result will be something that we need to work through in future IPC meetings. What I would say though is that we will expect to get some further clarity around, specifically wastewater discharges in December and the early parts of next year when government comes out with their approved standards. Then we can then we know kind of what sort of model might fit the population or the size of the network that we'll be providing services to.
I realise there's no work, but if you need to take into account what you've got to do, and that is not required, then that requires more work in preparing the document anyway, because you need to figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But if you don't need to do that, then you make savings, right?
Correct.
Deputy Mayor.
Yep, thank you. And it's just a comment really just to thank Councillor Jukes for being a new addition to the committee, a new role as Chair of Finance and Performance.
Thank you.
Thanks. If there's no further questions or clarification, the recommendations are on page 23 of the agenda, and I'll read them out. 1, that the Three Waters Consent Replacement Program update November 24 report be received, and 2, that Councillor Julie Jukes be appointed as an additional representative to the Three Waters Program Steering Group as Chair of the Finance and Performance Committee. So do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor James, Councillor O'Brien. So for debate, I'd like to make a statement. as the chair of the project steering group, and we've heard already that this whole Three Waters thing is mind-boggling and eye-watering figures before we even put a stake in the ground. And so my thoughts are, and these are my thoughts as to where we should go, is that we need to start with what is our level of affordability and sustainability that gives us the funds that tell us what we can do. Now, there is a percentage, I understand, and I'm not sure what that percentage is of. Is it of rates or the 2%?
Household incomes.
Household income is a basis to start that. But we need that start point so that then we can decide what we can do with it. Our current drinking water, as you've heard, is sort of okay, but it's really our sewage assets that need attention, namely the Edgecombe Effluent Pond, the Wakatani ponds. We've got Matata, not Matata, well, we have got Matata, but we've also got Mirapara and Taniatu and Timahoe that all need consent renewals and upgrades. And as we've heard, we're tasked with the consent renewals, but I think we'll morph into having an overview of the whole Three Waters program. So we won't ever reach the compliance level that government want. No one will, really. So our plan that we have to put by September
25 next year.
25, we should tell them what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and what level we're going to reach in terms of our affordability and sustainability, because that's what they're asking for is a report. Our plan needs to be sustainable, so that's what we'll tell them. It'll be sustainable, but this is what we're going to do, and this is the level we're going to reach. And so then we can move on from there, and all this in conjunction with our treaty partners, of course. And we've already got co-governance schemes underway now, which is really great. We don't need to wait. We don't need to wait for government to say, well, this is the level. We're going to say, this is where we can reach. And affordability is the point that we've got to get to. And we're also hearing from Janine in her report that our staff have got their eyes all over this stuff. And it's great to see that they're using, or looking at templates they've used for other projects and say, well, look, we can fit them into this or that. And it's, we're not reinventing the wheel. So for those out there that think that the staff, the tail wagging the dog, it's not the case. We as council set policy, and our staff work really hard to bring resolutions and answers to those policies that we decide on. So I applaud our staff for the amount of work they've got to do. That's on the way. Some of you got no idea what's involved. It's only the tip of the iceberg, really. And there will be no funding from government. They've been quite clear on it. So let's make our own way and let's put a stake in the ground and get on with it. Thank you. So, any comment? Any debate?
I've got one.
So we've got Mayor Luca.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Chair for acknowledging the affordability issue. It's nice to hear it. With regards to the compliance landscape, the government has sent out some quite strong signals that won't change. And it's not quite true that we're not compliant. Our current schemes are compliant, otherwise we wouldn't be able to carry on. Sometimes you'll see a non-compliance triggered, but that could be for 5 minutes of sediment that gets in the water or something like that. So mostly our schemes are compliant, as the compliance landscape is at the moment today. But their signals have been quite strong, and I'm in the process of writing to the Minister to get more reassurance that that's not going to become more stringent. And it hasn't in terms of drinking water. If you look at and I've said this many times, if you look at the current standards, the ones that were put in force in the last couple of years, and those pre-2008, they're almost identical, except that in 8 determinants which have actually got more lenient. So I'm not so sure that the regulatory bar is going to be raised all that much. But as Bevan said, we wait and see, because there's an uncertainty about what they're going to do. But I think that they're very cognizant of the fact that if they keep putting standards up, then we'll never reach it, and nothing will ever be affordable.
So I agree that we're compliant, and on the Zoom with DIA that day, the presenter suggested, I think to your question, that they wouldn't be changed, but we've just got to restate our case, and I don't think we can afford to wait. I think we've just got to get on with it. And tell them that this is where we are and this is what we're going to do. And the main reason, there's no other reason really, apart from affordability and sustainability, which is what they're asking for. So we'll be saying, well, our affordability for this district and sustainability is this level here. And that's what we're doing.
Well, it hasn't just been on one occasion that they've made those comments. Minister Brown has stated it quite explicitly in another forum, and DIA have said it twice. But the other thing to mention is affordability is actually a health hazard. When people are subjected to financial stress, they do things they wouldn't otherwise do. Things like family violence, things like suicide rates. Our country doesn't have a good record in that area, and a lot of that's got to do with, I posit anyway, has got a lot to do with financial stress. So there's a limit to everything.
So
Thank
we're without dragging it out, we're in between a rock and a hard place, because people still want to turn the tap on and the good stuff comes out. They still want to press the system and it all goes away, but it costs money. So how do we manage that? And that's our challenge, I think. Any other deputy?
Thank you, Mr Chair. So are you indirectly advocating that we disregard what the Crown and Taumata Arawai are setting as the compliance benchmarks, and to do what is right for our communities within our budget?
That's my suggestion, rightly or wrongly. But the simple fact is, if their levels are up here and we can't afford that, we aren't going there. It's as simple as that, really, in my opinion, anyway. So it is about affordability, and they talk about affordability and sustainability, and so that's where we're making our play, I believe, and that's why I don't think we should wait, because we all know what that figure is. We'll work it out and present a plan. Then we can get going on it. Otherwise, we'll still be having this discussion in a couple of years' time. In my view, anyway.
And do you think that would open us up to any legal cost as a result of that? Because that could indirectly cost us more. Or you don't think they've got the cooners to do that?
Well, our plan will say that for us, the sustainability and affordability level is here. And I don't think anybody can argue with that, because that's where it is.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Mr Chair.
No, but you're right. We've got to sell it, but the opportunity's there because that's what they say, and they're not giving us any more money either. So
I'd be happy for us to test it.
yeah, it's a catch-22. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Surprisingly, I quite agree with you, Mr Chairman, is that it's about, but it's not about working out what budget we're going to do, it's going to also work out the priority list. And I know that Regional Council are really pushing hard, according to one of the meetings I was in, that Edgecombe is really, really high on the Regional Council's priority list because of where the outflow goes out through the Tarawera. And we all know that Taniatu is a really high priority too, because it feeds into our water supply above the inlet. And so I agree with you that like everything's a priority, but it has to be mixed with what the people can afford. So yeah, I totally agree with you that we need to work out the plan, incorporating priorities, incorporating what the household can cope with, and then proceed from there. And maybe that would send a clear message to the government they actually need to start helping. If every council around the country said, look, we know these are the priorities, but we can only knock off the first one or the first two, then maybe the government might actually sit back and take notice and say, well, these are and the reasons why we can't do everything. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. Thank you.
Yeah, we just got to tell them. That's how it is. Yeah, look at.
There are problems and there are solutions to problems, and there's often not one solution to a problem, and they're not all equivalent. Sometimes you can find workarounds that are cheap that get you to where you need to go, and those are the things we have to find. Don't go looking for the gold-plated standard when the bronze-coated one gets you over the line, and that's the position we're in. Thank you.
Agree. Any, Councillor James?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with everything that's been said here, Nick. To me, priorities are health risks. If everyone in the district was healthy, and we're doing what we can afford, then I don't think we need, as the Mayor says, we don't need a gold-plated standard that some idyllic governments have in their mind. Our standards don't need to be quite probably as high as they are, but the important thing is you can't afford to have unhealthy water, water around either. So do what we can afford and worry about the rest later.
Yep. Thank you for that. Any further comment? Councillor Dukes?
Thanks. I think I would be liking to have a little bit more information before I offer an opinion on this. The recommendations are to receive the report and appoint me to the committee. It's not to actually debate this now. And if we were to debate it, which I'm not saying we shouldn't, I think I would like to have a little bit more information before I formulated an opinion either way. So, but appreciate what you've raised, Mr. Chair.
So the purpose is really, it was my view of where we should go, and as the chair of the committee, it's not my way or the highway, but it's just about thinking about what we have to do. So what I'd like to do then, if without further ado, is to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, so next item. 6.3 is the Airport Master Plan, which is with Bevan and Mark. Thank you, ladies. And it's on page 32 to 63 of the agenda.
Kia ora. I'll just start by assuming that the document has been fully read, but just a little bit of a caveat or just a last-minute comment. As most of you are aware, this is the end of quite a big piece of work. The master plan suite consisted of close to 130 pages, so the main aim of this process was to try and condense as much of that relevant information into one document that is going to be easy to digest for the public. The intention is for all of those documents to be made available to the public, and we'll work with our comms team on the best ways to do that. And as I said throughout the report, it's just to show that we're transparent, and there's some pretty technical information in there that some people might care to look up, so all of that will be available in time once we adopt this Master Plan 2024. So I'm happy to take any feedback or questions or whatever to move forward.
So questions of clarification, anybody? No? So the recommendations are on page 32 of the agenda, and I'll read them out. That the Infrastructure and Planning Committee receive the Airport Master Plan 2024 report, and 2, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee adopt the Wakatani Airport Master Plan 2024 as appended to this report. Move and a seconder, please. So Councillor James and Councillor Tangos. So debate. If there is none, you're off the hook, Mark. So Mayor Luca.
Yeah, well done, Mark.
Thank you, Mayor.
Looking good. Thanks.
Okay, so Councillor Dents.
I'd just like to add, I was really pleased with that report because A, it incorporates where we're going in the future, B, it incorporated extra buildings for those that want to store their planes thing, and I was really pleased to see the solar power thing being added into. So I thought it was quite a well-rounded report, and so it was really pleasing to see, so thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Tangos, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to echo thanks for this. We've been waiting quite a long time for this to come through, and it's great to see a clear kind of blueprint for moving forward. So thank you very much for that. I'll make one minor thing. I think where we talk about the building and we talk about it winning the Enduring Architecture Award, we should name the architect.
Point taken. Yep.
Thank you. If there's no further debate, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Next item, 6.4. Matata Wastewater Project Update, November 24. David Bewley and Janine again. Thank you, Mark. And so this is on page 64 to 104 of our agenda. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Again, I'll take the report as read, probably just a couple of areas that are outlined. Last time we were here, we outlined that we were undertaking a peer review of our environmental monitoring program that we've undertaken over the last 2.5 to 3 years, and that was on the 3 big summary reports on surface water quality, groundwater, and also microbiology and faecal source tracking. And so that peer review has been complete by ESR, and we've just done a little bit of a summary of what they found, but obviously their main statement in their executive summary is that they are in agreement with the overall conclusions made in the following 3 reports. They did give some recommended further analysis that we could do and some further areas that we could look into, but did say that that wouldn't make a material difference to the conclusions. So the technical team have now taken that information and we will make relevant updates to those final reports to support any future resource consent application. So that process has been complete. The other thing that we've included on the report is the final documentation of the cultural narrative, which is an awesome milestone for the project. So in that small document, it outlines pretty much the journey we've been on in co-design in Matata from the outset. And the great thing about it, even though it's written down now, is that that has embedded through every discussion, technical piece of work, brief, planning day, the entire way through the Matata Wastewater Project. It informed the environmental monitoring program, it informed the wastewater system options analysis, and it informed the land analysis. And so it's really nice to see it all put together in a final report, and that report was fully endorsed by our iwi and hapu representatives as their main component to that work. That has been fully endorsed by them. It then is been shared with the co-design group and then here today to share with yourselves. So it was a great milestone for the project. Obviously, we've been out and about. Council is now the owner of Tahi Hill Farm on Cavahill Road, which has been another major milestone for the project. The day that we took over ownership, we made contact with all remaining neighbours of Tahi Hill Farm, and we are working with them to talk through what that means, and we will continue that process right through, offering and inviting them to be part of that with us, including looking at having a meeting in December. We will be on site talking about what the treatment plant will look like, how we mitigate our effects, and how they can have raise their concerns and everything with us. The team were also at the spatial plan open day in Matata the other day, where I understand there was a lot of people through the door, and so we're consistently sharing what we're doing on the project and talking about where we're heading next. I'm happy to take any questions.
David, any comment? So, points of clarification, I've got Mayor Luca and then Councillor James.
This government seems to be taking aim at Te Mana o Te Wai. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I guess it will be reflected in the new RMA legislation. How will that impact, do you think?
Yeah, I can comment on that. So, in terms of Te Mana o Te Wai, the concept is first their health, secondly their health needs of people, and thirdly industry and the like. In terms of the situation that we've got in Matata, we've got human fecal contamination in the majority of our downstream sites. That has implications under the Public Health Act as well as the RMA. So in terms of that concept changing, I don't think it becomes any more acceptable under RMA legislation or Public Health Act.
I think also just saying we have Phil Mitchell, who's been on the technical team. He's our RMA expert, so you would have seen Phil in and around over the last 3 years with our planning work. And they obviously are very aware that there are changes coming, and obviously what's happening, we're not sure with the freshwater management legislation as well. We will keep right across that. If we move to resource consent next year, then we will make sure that we are keeping across anything coming out of the government that could inform or impact on the Matata project.
Okay, do you have another?
I have another, but I think we'll...
No, I think get yours, do yours, and then we'll go.
Somewhere along the line I saw the number 450 for the number of houses that will be served by the land distribution of treated wastewater. Well, there's 260 now, so it's not actually that much more, of another 150 houses, which is 150 more than we've got now. What happens when it reaches capacity? Because it's not a huge number, because we're talking thousands, aren't we?
So we've staged the project and we're aligning with the spatial plan work that obviously is also out in public engagement at the moment, talking about growth for the Matata node. So we have 3 stages. We have stage 1, which is for 400 homes. Stage 2, 800. Stage 3 can be 1,200 or 1,500 with the spatial plan, depending on where the spatial plan goes with that. What it means for us is that when we build the treatment plant, we make sure that it's fit for purpose for the next 10 to 20 years. It is a modular design, so we would look to build for stage 1 in terms of the treatment plant, but design it in a way that when your growth continues, you then put your modules on that support that. However, we are looking at land to cater for disposal for the growth that is being indicated in the spatial plan.
So there'll be a need to buy more land?
Correct. We've always looked at 2 different properties. There is a second property that we are looking at, a couple of options, and we'll be bringing that to you hopefully in the new year. But we will look to secure a second property, in essence to future-proof the project for the much long term, like your 50 to 80 year term. We're also doing some technical work on Tahi Hill Farm right now with PDP, which will ascertain exactly how many homes the disposal options on Tahi Hill will be able to cater for, so we can get a really good understanding of what Tahi Hill can actually, the total amount it can bring for the project to support the staging.
Supplementary, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I was looking at the map of the land that we purchased, and there is a stream that runs. I don't know if it's a stream. It looks like a stream on Google Maps.
Yep.
Is it? Which leads to the river essentially.
Yes.
So runoff could end up there.
Yes, there are actually a number of streams that are on the farm as well as in thing, and we've been monitoring program. So we have to take all of that receiving environment into account when we determine how we treat and how we dispose. So there is in essence no negative effect to anything, and that includes anything to do with the surrounding waterways. So that would have to form all part of the resource consent process. We do a full constraint and geological map of the farm when we do the resource consent, and have to be very clear where anything is there, including any significant sites, wetlands, significant areas of vegetation, and our consent conditions must take into account mitigating any effect to those natural waterways.
Right, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that you've got waterways there, and nitrogen and phosphorus inevitably finds its way there.
Yes.
So land dispersal sounds good, but in the end, it also can have deleterious effects. But anyway, I guess when we apply for resource consent, that'll be taken into account, and we may or may not get it, depends on what.
Yes, and as we know, there are very strict rules around all of that we have to follow.
Yeah.
Asset
So
activity.
before we go to councillor James, I think we should just be mindful that that block was never for land disposal. There was always going to be another block to purchase for that. So you're not having disposal on that block.
Oh, you'll have some. Yeah, you will have
Not
some.
not
Well,
totally.
Not the whole block.
Anyway, councillor James.
Yeah, good morning, ladies, and thank you very much for a pretty comprehensive report. Just on page 67, and the last summary recommendations, you've got conduct detailed review of the age and design of on-site water systems, and focusing on the older systems that explore upgrades and that. Are you looking at, is that implying that residents are going to have to upgrade their septic tanks and that prior to us putting in a system, or is this council we're going to replace their tanks until we get the system in place?
Yeah, so I can answer that. That summary of recommendations has come from the peer review report that ESR has prepared. Part of options for upgrades is that you have to be compliant with the wastewater standard and the offset plan, and within the offset plan there are specific rules around setbacks from water bodies and the area that you must have for irrigation. So there's very limited capacity for Matata properties to actually upgrade their septic tanks and be compliant, because you've got 3 streams that effectively run through Matata, and also you've got very little land remaining on sections with where you could expand your irrigation field. So these are just recommendations, and the technical team will work through them and also the feasibility of implementing those recommendations.
So I would say we wouldn't be conducting that if we're going forward with a reticulation scheme. However, if that is not the option that is taken forward, then the maintenance zone comes into effect, and I would expect the regional council that would be a core part of what they would be having to do, would be conducting a review of all septic tank systems in Matata as part of that other option.
Thank you.
We've got councillor Dennis and then back to Mayor Luca.
Just a point of clarification, because before I ask my 2 questions, as the Mayor said, 260 houses, but you've also got to include 3 marae and 1 camping ground on the opposite side, because that's actually polluting the lagoon quite badly at the moment, and Regional Council are putting severe restrictions on them from now until when we get reticulated. I've got a question on page 78. When we talk about the wonderful write-up that you've done of the history, and under on the right-hand side under Ngāti Rangatihi, where we're talking about a third of the way down, where we talk about due to the Tarawera River's cleanliness and purity, that Ngā Toirangi gave it the moniker Te Awa o Te Atua, or the River of the Gods. Is moniker a suitable word? Why didn't we just say the title or the name? I just found that really weird.
So I can't answer that, I'm sorry, Councillor Dennis. Obviously it was written by the cultural advisors alongside the iwi and hapu members. I can go back with that question if you'd like.
Can we relook at the word moniker? I thought that was a bit weird. Also on page 80, where it talks towards just above the diagram, it talks in 2018, Toita Ora Public Health push for Matata's recognition as a maintenance zone. I remember being in a regional council submission hearing with Russell Law prior to 2015, where we were arguing them to please hold off putting into a maintenance zone because Toyota Ora was in the same submission hearing pushing for us too. So I think your 2018 should go back to 2013 myself. Now, double check in case I'm wrong, but Jeff Farrell would know. Okay, thank you.
Mayor Luca?
As you know, I did my own review of the Matata environmental monitoring program, and that agreed quite well with the ESR study of 2012. And the present peer review, which I'm still going through, is quite nuanced, actually. But one thing is absolutely undeniable, and that is that the pub is leaking like a proverbial sieve. When was the last time the pub did anything to its septic system? I mean, as in bringing it up to some sort of standard.
2 years ago.
Have they ever? When do they pump it out? Where, you know, it's obviously inadequate for the number of people using it. So perhaps you can get back to me later if you want on the history of maintenance of the Matata pub.
I could reply to that now. Two or 3 years ago, they put a whole brand new system and they spent quite a bit of money. So the owner, the previous leasee, hadn't upgraded it, and so when it changed over, the current owner of the buildings went through it and completely built a whole new one where the caravan park was. So it is up to date. It's just unfortunate that it's the creek next to it, which is leaking into the river. Now that unnamed creek next to it comes from around behind the pub, and when Nicholas, Jessica and I were there looking at the seeps, it's actually seeping out of the hill behind the pub, going around there and down through that drain into the lagoon. Like the other seeps behind the fire station and Warbrick Terrace, it's seeping from somewhere back up. So that's where we say that the geostructure of the town is that crook, that it's collecting all the sewage soakage from the town, it's running through these seeps. Now, you may disagree with that, but it's pretty obvious that when you go there, it's not out of the pub, it's actually out of the hill behind us, because it's got to bring you. Thank you.
Can I just add to that as well? As Councillor Dennis said, the Matata Hotel has gone through a resource consent process and subsequently upgraded their septic tank. There is also contamination in other areas other than just beside the pub, and I think that's the key point here, is we've got contamination in the Waimea stream, which is not near the pub. You've got it at the edge of the lagoon, which is not in any area where you've got septic tanks nearby, which indicates there's some influence of groundwater. In terms of the correlation between the ESR report back in 2012 that you mentioned, just wanted to point out that that's based on very limited data, only one round of faecal source tracking. So since that report, we've had a robust 3-year monitoring program where we've had 3 years of faecal source tracking with persistent human faecal contamination in our downstream sites. And that's one of the key differences between those reports. Thank you.
I'm not going to get into a ping pong match with you, but I've reviewed all of the data that we were ever presented with. And the 2 reports that went to ESR had slightly more, a few extra data points in it. But I've gone through that report with a fine-tooth comb, and the guy who signed off on that peer review said that it aligned with the 2012 study. Anyway, I'm still going through it, so we'll talk about it later. Yes, there are spots of contamination, but the Waitapuru stream is pretty clear. And there's also some errors in their report. But anyway, we'll carry on.
I think the answer to your question is...
We're only receiving the report. So.
That's right, but the answer to your question about the pub is that they've done their work that they needed to do. So I think that's...
well, I'm not sure if they...
We don't need to hang them out to dry.
I think also just if anybody else would like to see the reports and the peer review, we're also more than happy to share them. The co-design group has also received them.
Thank you. So the recommendation is on page 64, and I'll read it out, that the Matata Wastewater Project Update November 24 report be received. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Emick, second. Councillor Dennis. Any debate? All good. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, ladies. What I propose is that we attend to the next item, 6.5, before we have morning tea. And after that, and before we move to morning tea, we'll go into public excluded. So we now have item 6.5, which is amendments to the Register of Parking Restrictions, Prohibitions and Limitations, November 2024. So we have Chris and Joe. Thank you. The floor is yours. Just
Morena.
make sure your microphones are on, please. Thank you.
Morena, everyone. I take my report for the amendments to the parking register as read. The reason for the report is to amend some of the parking register alignments that are not quite correct. So these are markings that are already in place and just updating so they can become enforceable. And the second part is a recommendation to approve some proposed new marking changes. Probably those of note are the movement of the bus stop from Key Street back to Boone Street to allow for the flood works on Key Street, and also the addition of 3 new mobility parks of the Strand. So any questions?
So the paper's on pages 105 to 124. Clarification?
I'm just wondering if, because I keep seeing more and more parking restrictions over time, are we going to end up with parking restrictions everywhere?
So
we've got to be reasonable about these things.
Yes, the restrictions that we're amending at the moment that are already in place are basically minor amendments that haven't been, sometimes when new road markings put down, it might be a few centimetres over, so we need to ensure that those are correct in the register. Also mobility parks, one of them is, historically there was a mobility park on Boone Street that's no longer there, so we want to remove that from the register. And there's one in this area that's not on the register, so we want to ensure. So that's not increasing, if you like, the amount of enforcement. The other ones are requests that have been made from the public for safety reasons or things like that, so the team will look into and see if it's valid before we do it. So, no, I don't believe we're just increasing our enforcement.
Well, I'm not talking about just this particular round of tweaking, but I've actually had a complaint about, so I might come and see you later about seeing if we can tweak another one.
Yep.
Thank you.
At a previous meeting, we did highlight that this is likely to be a standing item and come quite regularly as circumstances change, as transport changes, as things get busier, as development happens. These need to be regularly updated.
Any further questions? Councillor Tandros and then Councillor James.
Thank you. On the other hand, we often get asked for more disability parking in particular, particularly through social media and things like that, and when we've spoken to the community, how do we get that balance right?
Yeah, it's a good question actually, and I think it's about just understanding what the needs of our disabled community is, and quite often it's not about having more, it's about having better located or more appropriate parking. So a lot of these ones here where we had a workshop with the disability sector and the taxi companies earlier in the year to just understand what those needs were, and so that's sort of starting to inform these decisions. And so out of that came a real need for a lot of our users to use vans rather than cars, and so those vans need to load off the back. So rather than having more angled parks, they're saying actually it's the parallel parks that we really need, that we can access off the back safely rather than accessing onto the street, which a lot of them have been doing, so sort of accessing into the live lane. So this has been really about just sort of addressing that need, not necessarily about adding more parks, although I do say there are a couple more in here. And then also responding to requests from businesses. So Body in Motion was one who requested an additional mobility park because they have clients with a lot of those needs. Parking utilisation in that part of town isn't high, so it's easy enough to provide without having a negative impact on other users.
Councillor James?
No, Joe's just clarified what I was going to ask about, so thanks.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Dennis?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Just in regard to the parking restrictions and like removal of private car parks and pack and save, it brings up another question that where there's been an increase of fines for those parking and disability car parks, do we police the ones that are in the supermarket car parks?
Those ones are being removed because they are in private car parks and we have no authority to enforce private car parks.
So they're going to change from disability car parks to...
That would be up to the supermarkets.
Okay.
Their disability car parks, not ours.
Thank you. And then there's the one on the corner, car park removal and parking prohibitions on Stewart Street. So I see in that diagram there, we're going to remove, so that people can see when they come out of Banksia Lane. I see we're going to remove 2 car parks. Why don't we just remove just one? That would enhance to start with. I mean, it was the same issue we had out here where we removed 3 or 4 car parks and we objected to that. I've just, once again, as someone said, we seem to be removing more than we need to. Wouldn't we just remove one?
So their decision to remove 2 is based on the sort of sight lines from that driveway, so that they had appropriate sight distance to oncoming traffic based on the travel speeds. So that was a sort of a technical decision, I guess, based on information that's provided from NZTA.
So if this is going, I appreciate that. If this is going to be an ongoing item that comes up, wouldn't we just remove one? And if that doesn't actually fix the problem, we could remove the second one later on. I just keep saying we're removing, like the mayor, we're removing car parks all over the place.
If there's a general consensus that's favourable, then we'd be more than happy to reduce that just to 1 car reduction. Obviously, it does have some safety implications, but I think they're relatively minor. So,
Of note for that one, we staff did discuss the changes with the Whakatane Hospital, who will be the most impacted, or their consumers, and they are fully supportive of those 2 car parks being removed.
Okay. Just the last one, the parking prohibitions at the P Street, McGarvey Road roundabout. Just, we're obviously taking away more car parks leading up to the dairy on the corner.
No, we haven't taken away more. We've taken away restrictions because we've allowed a parking bay there for the dairy. So there's restrictions removed. So the roundabout lines probably have just extended slightly.
Okay, thank you.
So I just have a question, and then Councillor Tangos. Do private businesses or car parks, do they have an obligation under their consent or resource consent to supply accessible car parks? Is that the case, or are they allowed to do what they like?
Currently, under the resource consenting process, they're required to have 1 disability car park for every 20 car parks, essentially. For the first 20 car parks, they need to have at least 1 that is a disability car park. So yes, if it's their on-site parking.
Thank you. Councillor Tangos?
Thank you. Mine's kind of a bit of a follow-up to that, and Councillor Dennis. So we're taking off our register because we can't enforce on private property. If the private property owner invited us to enforce, would we be able to?
Do you want that one?
I believe historically there was discussions with Pack and Save about enforcement. David, do you might?
I think part of the issue was always, is it legal or not to do it? Because we did have an arrangement with Pack and Save, and we were, but it is still private land. So, our obligations are generally in terms of public land and public parking.
So in the sense of any ticket or anything you gave wouldn't be enforceable because it's not public land.
I think that was the issue. I'd have to
Yeah.
check back on the basis for it, but
Right, thank you.
Any further points of clarification? I'll now put the recommendations which are on page 105 of the agenda. I'll read them out again. 1, that the amendments to the Register of Parking Restrictions, Prohibitions and Limitations November 2024 report be received. And 2, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee approve the existing parking amendments and proposed parking amendments, including the need for the amendments to be publicly notified as set out in the Appendix 1, Register of Parking Restrictions, Prohibitions and Limitations Schedule of the Amendments, November 2024. And 3, that the Infrastructure and Planning Committee notes that once the parking amendments are in place, the parking restrictions, prohibitions and limitations register will be updated following public notification. So do I have a mover and a seconder for those? Councillor O'Brien, second. Councillor Tangos. Any debate? All those in favour, I'll put the motion in. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
So, before we go to morning tea, I'll move, there's a resolution to exclude the public. The recommendation is on page 125 of the agenda, and I'll read it out. That the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely the 2 packages there for airlines and Air Chathams. So, I have a mover and a seconder. Councillor James, Councillor Dukes, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. So we'll now go to morning tea and then come back